met you in the half-light, where the signals hum and fade, words hanging like laundry on a wire we never made. Your eyes were doing circles like a compass without north. I was counting all the seconds I've been walking back and forth. The clock was missing numbers, the street forgot its name. Every thought I carried felt borrowed, bent and strange. You spoke in quiet riddles, like rain against the glass. And I felt something loosen that I didn't know I had. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect line, just a frequency that holds through time. I've been trading paper promises at corners of the day, watching shadows sell their stories, then quietly walk away. But you stood like a question that refused to disappear, like a song I didn't know, but somehow always hear. Your laugh moves slow and sideways, like smoke across a room. I followed it instinctively, like moths follow the moon. Every step between us shortened, though we didn't move at all, like gravity remembered why it had to fall. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind. We don't need a perfect sign, just a signal that survives the night. If love's a map with half the roads erased, we'll read it by the scars we trace. No fireworks, no closing door, just echoes learning what they're for. Now the world keeps spinning stories it insists are true, but I hear a softer rhythm every time I look at you, like something ancient waking underneath the noise, a quiet stubborn harmony that never begs for choice. So tune your heart a little closer to mine. Let the static fall behind in the spaces between.
All right. Let's see. Is that? Oh, hey, Beth. Good morning, and hey, Jess. Then Jess says, hit that like button, and or as Adam Meister would say, pound that like button. For those who don't know, Adam Meister, a Bitcoin OG, friend of mine, a great guy, and was telling everybody to buy Bitcoin when it was $400 a coin. And when right now it's, I don't know, it's all over the place, 90,000, 100,000, whatever it is. Anyways, good morning to all of you, and I hope this is the best Saturday morning of your life. And if not, I'm going to do my very best to make sure that it is. And I'm going to start with our land acknowledgement. And for those who don't know, that is the ridiculousness clown show that was introduced into Canada, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago. And we do this this performative pseudo proto-commie nonsense in our city councils, in our schools, at charity events, at sporting events. So because of that, we have our land acknowledgement that I'm going to share with all of you. And this is what I've decided on for now. And I think this really says it all. I think this really explains the state of Canada and all of us as a unified nation right now. We'll talk more about that in a little bit. We'd like to gently acknowledge that we're standing on the traditional territory of, well, whomever was here first and was savagely killing each other at the time. Anyway, they aren't in charge anymore. We're here until the Americans take over. So there you go. That is our land acknowledgement that I think we've decided on for now, but we'll see. We'll see how things move forward. I'm sure that's going to upset some people. Tomorrow, I'm actually going to talk about some of the grift you're seeing amongst Native communities in Western Canada, and the setup, the brainwashing setup that you are all being primed with from all sides, not just one side. This is why it's important to call balls and strikes on all sides. That's the way you know when it's your own side that is attacking you. And I like to say that it's not your opposition or your enemy that's going to be brainwashing you, because, well, you're just going to dismiss them right off the bat. But it's really the people on your own side who you think you can trust. Those are the people who are going to brainwash you. That's why I don't like to have sides. I don't like to join teams. I just like to be pragmatic and as reasonable and as honest as possible. That's my frame. Something that politicians struggle with. I should tell you this. This is funny. One of the very first, not the very first, but an early conversation I had in politics, testing people. For me, it's important to understand where loyalty fits in your life. I'm one of those people who happens to believe, let me just fix this camera, it's annoying on Substack. Sorry, everybody on Substack. I'm one who believes that loyalty to those you love and friends and all that stuff, that's very important. I remember asking somebody within the Conservative Party infrastructure, I said, I asked him that question, that for me, and I think for most reasonable people, loyalty is everything. And he said, well, I don't know if I go that far. I'm like, what do you mean that far? And I'm thinking like Scarface. All I got in this world is my word and my balls, and I don't give them up for nobody. Anyways, the response I got out of this guy was, yeah, loyalty's okay, but yeah, that doesn't really have a place in politics or something like that. It doesn't have a place. It's overrated. However he worded it, I can't remember. And I was just astounded. I'm like, oh, wow, does your wife know that? So anyways, thank you all for being here. And you know what? You all look amazing. You all look like you are full of great and positive energy today, And hopefully we're going to work together and make today a more fun and more enlightened, positive day. But you're really amazing for being here. And thank you. So do any of you positive, amazing people Have any interest in buying a Chinese car now? I think we discussed that today. We'll discuss more of that in future episodes. Right now, oh, I should put this on Do Not Disturb. Jesse, I don't know if you want to check, if you can check, but I'm streaming this within the Discord server. And if you can just, I don't know, tell me if you see anything. If you don't, I don't know. I'm going to have to do like a special nighttime test on Discord. Maybe I'll do Discord and locals and Substack one night or something like that to test out if it's not working. But we'll get to that. So today is going to be a little bit fun. We're going to learn about how law enforcement becomes woke and delusional. It's, I hope, going to be enlightening for a lot of you, but it should be consistent with human behavior, and you'll understand why. And why law enforcement focuses on Twitter and Facebook and X posts. And if you're thinking it, then you're right. Yes, law enforcement is a Dilbert cartoon. It really is. You know, there's so much wisdom in the cartoon Dilbert over the many decades. So I encourage you all to go to scottadams.local.com. They are running all of the Dilbert cartoons historically, and they're pretty interesting. But that framing of the world, Hanlon's razor, that you never attribute malice to things that can be explained by stupidity, that's like 80%. I think that's 80% of the world. So check that out. Articles on Substack, bjdictor.substack.com, honkingforfreedom.com to get a copy of my book that you can see right there, honkingforfreedom.com. Get a copy of it there if you could. I promise it will also help you get a little hope for humanity, which was kind of the goal. And anyways, Substack and locals, those platforms probably are going to be membership subscriptions over the long term. They're not now, so join it while you can. And eventually they will be turned on because there's going to be a lot more sort of exclusive type content. I'm always going to be streaming here and all that sort of stuff. But maybe we'll do a little bit more intimate things together, if you know what I mean. No, I don't mean it that way. But, you know, like maybe some nighttime stuff as my schedule starts to change over time. I'll be able to do that. I'm not showing on Discord right now. I don't understand. So are you in the live streaming channel? If you scroll down in Discord, all the way to the bottom, there's a channel called live streaming. If you click on that, you should see me. Let me know if that works. All right, no more tech support during the live stream. So let's start with a couple of funny and positive things. First, AI 2.0. ClaudeBot has been released, or whatever it's now called. It came out as ClaudeBot, and then for some reason it got rebranded to, is it Mallbot or Mortbot? I can't remember what it was. I can't remember when I was doing my notes. And that makes me think of a very valuable life hack when I hear, you know, ClaudeBot has been changed to Mortbot or Molebot or whatever it's called. And the life hack is this. If you're looking for advice in marketing and branding expertise, don't go to any developers or programmers. Just don't. You can skip that demographic. Go to another demo. Such horrible names. You even saw with Google when they were released Android, and they thought it'd be funny just to name, oh, this update's called ice cream sandwich. What? Like, just so. Anyways, you know, it's like the Big Bang Theory is running the world. Anyways, so, but the whole point of it is ClaudeBot, or whatever it's called now. It's really version 1.0 of where we're going. And the big innovation that it has introduced is, and it requires a little bit of coding, or at least understanding of the structure of coding to get it set up. But we're really at version 1.0, so it's still a little bit early. However, the idea is it will do everything. It will take over your entire computer for you. You set all the parameters, you tell it, you give it access to all the APIs, and it will be able to function as though it's you on your computer. So anything you can do on the computer, it can do. That includes sending emails, logging into your banking, paying bills, everything. It's a 24-hour assistant. It is pretty wild if this works out the way it should be, and the way it should. And this is kind of the holy grail of AI, or one of the holy grails of AI, is if you can get a digital virtual assistant that is an AI, that will be life-changing. So I'm very, very excited about that. I know a number of you are very uneasy with automation, with this degree of automation and security, and I get that, but this is just where the world is going. It's just the way it's going to be. And technology, like all things throughout the history of humanity, there are trade-offs. And the trade-off here is going to be, security, autonomy, but the benefits, I think, will greatly outweigh it. I know a lot of you will disagree with that, which is great. I want us to have things we disagree with, we disagree with each other on, but it's important to acknowledge that this is what's going on. And I'll explain it as I'm learning it, and you'll tell me why you don't like it, and that's cool. That's great. But just to be aware of it. Jess says, I literally see no live streaming link. Okay, it's not a link, it's a channel on the bottom of Discord. We're still working on Discord on this end. But okay, we'll work on that together, Jess. But thank you, I appreciate that. That's very sweet of you. Side post. So those of you who are familiar with Scott will know where I'm going with this. That's the beloved Scott Adams, who has departed. And for those who didn't see, I was on with Scott Adams' team on Monday of last week on their stream or on their podcast, whatever you want to call it. And I will likely be joining their Twitter space later on today, just for a little bit. I don't have a ton of time today, but I will be going in there. So according to Eric Dolan, Scott's favorite person at SciPost, he posted an article about another study. What do you think the study said? Well, the study said this. Researchers have found that individuals who frequently signal their victimhood often possess higher levels of narcissism. The study suggests that this, quote, victim mindset, end quote, is rooted in emotional instability and a need for recognition. Really? Really? That's what we learned. And it goes on to say, the research indicates that for some people, the tendency to see oneself as a victim is less about actual trauma and more about a specific personality structure that seeks recognition and validation. Really? Really? This is the innovative discovery that they have found in their research at, I believe it was Lakehead University, if I'm not mistaken. So the idea here is people who are frequently signaling victim status are doing so out of narcissism. You know who knew that? Not just Scott Adams, but all of you knew that. Everybody knows that. What's the purpose of this study? And if you don't get the joke, go back to watch old episodes of Coffee with Scott Adams, and you'll get it. I personally think this is money laundering in academia, but I could be completely wrong. We discussed CAFE, which is the corporate average fuel economy standards that were implemented by, I believe, the Nixon administration in the 70s. That's what led to the total collapse of the American auto sector throughout that time in the what was called the malaise era in cars. And the reason is, like, companies like American Motors was bought out by Chrysler because they were basically on the verge of bankruptcy again. And that's because American Motors didn't have the budget for research and development to completely retool the entire area of their business that dealt with engine engineering. They'd have to start from scratch because American Motors did a lot of buying engines from other companies, and they would have to develop, I guess, their own power plants because the other companies were scrambling, like General Motors and Ford and Chrysler. They were scrambling to build their own power plants so much that Chrysler said, "Screw it, we're just going to go to Japan and buy these Mitsubishi engines." So all those K cars, minivans, all those engines are Mitsubishi. Anyways, so that's what led to the total collapse. So in the vein of getting Trump getting rid of the CAFE standards, do you know what else he got rid of? Those of you, if you know truckers or have truckers in your family or you drive a diesel car, you'll know what DEF, which is diesel exhaust fluid. That's a fluid that gets pumped in next to the gas station if you're a trucker, or if you have a diesel Volkswagen, you have to buy it every so many fill-ups, I'm not sure. But diesel exhaust fluid essentially grabs the particulates and puts it, how do I explain it? We have a DF filter, and it essentially filters out the particulates. That's why you don't get black smoke out of a diesel engine. That's why all those people in Ottawa, all those political trash that were complaining, oh, the exhaust fumes, they were full of shit, because all of those trucks were DEF trucks. So there's no such thing as particulates because they're all I did a TikTok about that quite a while ago. So anyways, Trump has gotten rid of diesel exhaust fluid. And so for many of us, thank you, Mr. Trump. You just saved us $50 a day in expenses in DEF. Well, not now, but if this continues and non-DEF trucks make it back into the marketplace, then that will potentially save us money. So it's tied in closely, in my opinion. It's a cousin of CAFE standards. It might even be under the same legislation. So there you go. CAFE and DEF requirements are done. And I know there's people who watch who don't like Trump. I'm trying to talk not about his personality, but policies that the administration has implemented, and this is a pragmatic policy. And by the way, as I said, I'm not a fan of pollution. I think pollution sucks. You live enough in the third world, you see where there are not pollution controls and the negative implications of that. But perhaps we've gone a little bit far, that it causes economic strife in the Western world. I'm trying to... Rocky the cockatoo is watching. Hello, Rocky. Rocky apparently is my biggest fan in the animal kingdom so far. I'm hoping there will be others, but say hello to Rocky. On Twitter X, there was an account. Clearly, it's a fake account that's run by a foreign adversary. It's called War Surf, and it had a B-roll footage of a fighter jet flying across the sky. Okay, so it's just a video of watching a fighter jet flying across. So when I tell you that, there's no context, so you think, oh, okay, well then there's just a fighter jet. And this is what's called, it's a cousin of the curiosity gap, because now what a propagandist can do is just take a regular B-roll footage that you have no idea why the fighter jet is flying across the screen or across the sky, and you're open to any ideas. So what has this fake account, I think it's fake, but I could be wrong, what is the context that they're trying to infuse in the subconscious, the people that watch it? And this is what it says. It says, as tensions escalate between the US and Iran, Tehran has received Su-35 fighter jets from Russia. Is that what that video shows? I just see a plane flying across the screen. How do I know that B-roll is supportive of this claim? But that's how propaganda works. They give you a visual imagery of a plane, then your mind your subconscious is open for an idea. So now here, let me give you some context that could be completely fake. And I think in this case, it is fake. Why? I'm pretty sure Russia has their hands full with their unsuccessful invasion of the Ukraine, right? They're not sitting pretty right now. Russia is struggling, and I don't think they have just extra Su-35s lying around to send to Iran. I don't think they would waste their, like. Would you waste your valuable resources on a competitor in the oil industry? Because both Iran and Russia produce oil, so they're in competition with each other, right? But they're also friendly because they're adversaries of the free Western world. They just have a problem with that for some reason. Um, but do you really think they're going to sacrifice fighters that they need right now to protect a competitor? That doesn't make much sense. And you know what? So the people who say, "Oh, well, Russia and Iran are working together and they want to become an economic and oil bloc," or however they want to frame it. Okay, maybe, but then there's also the competition framing. Doesn't it make Russia more powerful if China is completely dependent upon Russia for oil as opposed to having two sources? If they just have one source, wouldn't Russia be able to jack the price of their oil that is, subverting all the sanctions? It would be in their interest to see economically, it would be in their interests. I don't know. It can go either way. I get it. But I just wanted to show kind of the other side of it. But I don't think there's any chance that Russia is going to use its limited supply of Su-35 jets and hand them off to Iran. I just don't think so. I think they have bigger problems right now, right? Okay, so the next, we'll talk about that more, Jess, tomorrow. And thank you, Jess, again. Please like, share, subscribe is what she says. Hit that like button. So we discussed that. Next, I posted yesterday and I talked about the arrest of Don Lemon, and we all kind of chuckled, and we know he's completely dishonest and a wannabe propagandist. We get that, right? I just, as much as I like Don Lemon, he's largely irrelevant, right? Like, the guy went and nuked his own career. And I think the final straw was the conversation he had with Elon Musk. And Elon Musk clearly was just trying to have a conversation in good faith. And it became very obvious that he wasn't. But I understand the frustration people have with Don Lemon and a bunch of proto-commies invading a church service, especially in the current era where over 100 churches have been burned in Canada and no one in law enforcement cares about it, or at least no one in media talks about it. So, and we also see what's happened with Notre Dame in France and churches across France that are being burned as part of this encroachment from Islamic extremism and communism into the West. So I understand the sensitivity and the context of the era that we live in and why people would be hypersensitive and want to act. And that he's not reporting, really. He's an activist, right? He's an activist working within that infrastructure. But I think he's kind of a barfly, right? I think he's really irrelevant. Yeah, he'll do the thing, and some people will pay attention to him on what I call blue sky, just because it's far left communist nonsense. But I understand that the people on blue sky will think it's a home run for them, and but he's just largely irrelevant at this point, in my opinion. But arresting him and charging him under the KKK Act, as much as I think that's hysterical, and that does send a message, I'm starting to change my mind on this, and maybe you have some thoughts and ideas that would counter this. I don't, like, I didn't like when Tommy Robinson was repeatedly arrested and harassed for exposing the RAPE gangs in England. I was not a fan of him being lawfared in that way. I don't like lawfare in general. I didn't like when he was lawfared. I didn't like when many others were lawfared. Donald Trump, I don't know, me being lawfared. Like, I'm not a fan of, and many other people I know who've been targeted in lawfare harassment suits. I'm not a fan of that. And I know it's not exactly the same thing, but it does smell very similar. And I get it. We all want retribution, but he's irrelevant, right? And I think what I'm more concerned about is, let's think on the pragmatic level, the potential for blowback. Don Lemon has no career left, and he's looking for work, which is why he's gone out with the proto-commie activists that are foreign funded, looking for a job. And maybe they just significantly elevated him amongst the far left. Notice the far left all of a sudden is pushing the First Amendment and free speech, right? That's all you hear about it. And we'll get to that in a minute. But I went on to Bluesky, and you see all these rallying cries and all the NGOs that have graphic designers, the ones who are making all the signs for the foreign paid for fake protests, that they all share the same sign and all that sort of stuff. I explained that on Scott Adams' stream, how you can distinguish between a genuine protest versus a fake protest. And you can see that on Bluesky. You see they're all, in lockstep. They're all sharing the same images and, setting up. They're all coalescing around Don Lemon to make him the martyr against Trump. And I guess Don Lemon just found a job, right? I think that's what happened. I'm going to play a clip that ties two concepts together, this idea of Don Lemon and something we've discussed previously, which is the emergence of the far left MAGA copycats. And in this case, we can call it communism with a cowboy hat. Remember, we're still experimenting with this stream. So I think Substack will be able to hear it, and I'll actually put my mic closer if I can find the video. Where is it? Down here? Yeah, and on the RMTP stream, it'll come through, and if you're listening, you'll hear it. So I think it's the audio that's most important. So I'm going to play this right now. This is something from, what's his name? Something's called Cowboy Paul or something like that is the name of his stream. Anyways, let's give him a listen and a view for those of you on the RMTP, and then we'll talk about this. Okay, remember, this is the idea of where the left is going when they abandon wokeism. All right.
Don Lemon and Georgia Fort have been arrested because an ICE agent murdered Alex Peretti on the street and Renee Good on the street, and they've been caught assaulting people and everything that has caused Donald Trump to lose his control of the immigration narrative. So yeah, go arrest Don Lemon as a distraction. That and Donald Trump is in the Epstein files. This is Old Texas Paul. Hope your coffee is as good as mine. Well, I
Old
hope it's
Texas
better.
Paul.
I want to tell you folks, I cannot reiterate to you enough your role that you are playing in this. You are getting this done. It is your online presence. It is your work of spreading information and not allowing them to control the narrative that has been everything so far. It is what's kept us afloat so far. You have to keep at it, folks. Don't let them bullshit their way through anything. Never accept anything. Those ballots they just took in Georgia, they lost all credibility. What the hell was the director of national intelligence doing in the back of a truck where they're just loading up boxes of ballots? What the fuck was she doing there?
Maybe she was doing intelligence work. Maybe that was her file. I don't know. But so that's Old Texas Paul. And Old Texas Paul, you can see it's just so perfect. It's so, you can tell a PR team set that up. He's got the cowboy hat. He looks a little bit like a young Wilford Brimley, sitting on the patio, having a coffee, and just talking about them. He's got a logo on his shirt and stuff. That is communist propaganda. That's how good they are. And most people will not even see it. Most people will not understand what that is. That is where the left is going. And they're going to brainwash people around you, around your family. They're going to focus on rural communities. And they're going to sell collectivism under the veil of, oh, we're just a Christian like you. But, you know, we all got to stick together here. And I liked Donald Trump in the past, but I don't like Donald Trump now. That's what they're going to do. And through repetition, that will be very persuasive for people who aren't aware that this is a propaganda strategy that's being used against them. And that is all over Bluesky. That's what you see. Bluesky is the best indicator of what, and you notice there's nothing about climate change, because a cowboy is not going to care about climate change, right? There's nothing about transgender and transgenderism and LGBT stuff. There's nothing there, right? They're pacing and leading people. They understand people in the center have moved away from the wokeism on the far left. So they're trying to meet them and then pace them over back to communism using this veil of the cowboy hat and the coffee. So it's important that people understand this is how this works. Any person who knows anything about high-level marketing communications, persuasion, hypnosis, that sort of thing, you can see exactly what that is. But so I posted it on Twitter, and I posted that on to the Substack notes, so you can all share it with people and help alert them as to what's going on. Last thing in media, there's somebody on CNN, the Communist News Network, by the name of Ana Navarro. And I'm sure many of you who dislike CNN have heard of her. She's the overweight Latina woman. And I'm not shaming people who are overweight, just the best way to understand who she is, right? She'll stick out that way. Anyways, she was on a panel on her show, the one that's frequently highlighted on X and on Twitter. There's outtakes from it because everybody's just a maniac on that show. But she's commenting on the proto-commie nurse that was shot by NICE. Remember, we're calling it NICE, the National Immigration and Citizenship Enforcement. NICE. Remember, call it that. So she's talking about that guy, Pretty, whatever his name is, who clearly was severely brainwashed and an extremist collectivist and very violent. And she's commenting on him and says, he's the perfect guy. The guy you'd want your daughter to date. The guy you'd want your son to grow up to be. He was serving humanity. There's nothing about that man that wasn't wonderful. So I'm sure you all know this is propaganda. Of course, we get that, and it's through repetition. You know, she said the same thing over and over again, but didn't say nothing other than he's a nice guy. She just said it in 3 different ways, which is very persuasive. And you hear politicians do that all the time, right? They'll say things like, it wasn't the right decision 6 months ago. It wasn't the right decision 2 years ago. It wasn't the right decision 10 years ago. What did they just say? Absolutely nothing. But this is how communication to your subconscious works. So anyways, but I want to give you an additional insight into Ana Navarro and this, not so much the propaganda strategy, but her people like her specifically. So I don't know her, but I know her archetype. You see a lot of this in Latin America. There's a certain archetype that she's exactly like this, and I'm sure my Latino friends will understand this because we've all seen it. in Latin America frequently. And there's this certain archetype there that you don't really see. I haven't seen, I mean, we have bad people here and there all over the place. But this specific archetype, I haven't seen much of in Canada and the United States. I'm sure it exists, but it's not nearly as prevalent as it is in Latin America. And I think that's just because it's due to economics. I think that's kind of what fuels this, a big part of it, the economic strife of a lot of third world countries having dictatorships that just steal all their money, sort of thing. Ana Navarro, this is a little bit hyperbolic, but not entirely. Ana Navarro is exactly the textbook template for a sex trafficker in Latin America. And I know you're going to think, whoa, what are you talking about? Hear me out. They always look like her. Heavy set, flashy clothes, jewelry, think they're sophisticated, think they're the princess, the diva. And they're also working with the narcos to recruit homeless girls for sex trafficking. If Ana Navarro was not on CNN, that's exactly the type of person she is. And you see, when you have a lot of experience in Latin America, those of you who do, you know exactly what I'm talking. I'm not talking about traveling. I'm talking about living there, getting to know people, and understanding the different subcultures. It's very common. It's common enough. You can when you're there enough, you can see it. And there's even a character like this usually featured in the novelas. Novelas are the soap operas in Latin America. There's always this sort of character. And people don't realize the role women play in organized crime and sex trafficking. Usually men are trafficked and recruited. They'll recruit other men for labor trafficking, which is a big part of human trafficking. But the women are almost always recruited by other women to be sex traffickers. And it's exactly this archetype that is Ana Navarro that are the sex traffickers. They look exactly like her. They behave like her. They have the same philosophical worldview. Now, I'm not saying Ana Navarro's a sex trafficker. That's not what I'm saying. She might be a very nice person, but her archetype is exactly what all the sex traffickers are like. So just a little word of warning about watching people like her. I want to get a little bit into, I go back to the live chat. Sorry, you guys are on the other window. And so let's go on to law enforcement. I wanted to talk about this a little bit yesterday, but ran out of time. This idea of how law enforcement has been, in some ways, in certain jurisdictions, not all of them obviously, has been collapsing on the West, or targeted, one might say. And you know, we often project motive onto people in law enforcement, and we look at them as a collective, like the police, like every individual police officer feels the same. And we all know that's not true. We're not going to use the communist framing of the world. We saw that during Ottawa. Like, I know all those cops were on our side. We all know that. That's why they couldn't get cops to show up in Ottawa, right? And they had to go to recruits. You know, first day on the job. Here you go, kids. So anyways, law enforcement, it really is, and this is my framing, it's the administration of law enforcement. It really is a Dilbert cartoon. And I think I mentioned this yesterday, that Dilbert was a cartoon that really articulated well Hanlon's razor, never attribute malice to those things that can be explained by stupidity. These law enforcement agencies, they are bureaucracies onto themselves. Many times they are massively gargantuan organizations. They are significantly larger than many corporations often. And the brass within many police agencies are politicians. The brass being, chief or deputy chief sometimes. Those are politicians, and they often are in that position. They climbed the ladder, did all the social justice garbage in policing that's ruining it, because they wanted to be elected into office. And a perfect example of that is Member of Parliament Bill Blair. who was a police chief in Toronto, if I remember correctly. And his political campaign was almost exclusively funded by radical Islamists, Bangladeshi Islamists, in fact, because I know people who volunteered on that campaign and reached out to me and said, we know you're not a Liberal Party supporter, but we're friends and all. Why we have all these Bangladeshi jihadis? I'm like, oh, that's money laundering for terrorism. That's who's funding his campaign. And of course, Canada, we don't prosecute anyone, right? We don't. It's all parking tickets, speeding tickets, and people who say bad things on Twitter, right? That's what gets prosecuted in Canada. Well, there's a series of steps that have allowed this to happen, right? So this is with the brass is where you have the politicians, usually DSs or detective sergeants and down. They're usually quite frustrated with the brass because, as some say, they're just whores. They'll just whore themselves out. And there's so many internal politics in this vast bureaucracy, which is what Dilbert often tried to address: stupidity and bureaucracy. And that's often why things don't get done. Now, add the fact that we have terrorist sympathizers in our police forces and on our police services boards across the country. And they're very collectivist. This is why law enforcement seems to be schizophrenic sometimes. It's not you. You're not crazy. It's not when you think law enforcement is one minute they're great, another minute it's the Stasi that's showing up because you said something on the internet and it looks schizophrenic. It is. And this is the Dilbert filter, how it works on it. And I'll use this as an example outside of law enforcement. It's like the TV show Star Trek Voyager. And you don't have to have seen Voyager to understand this example that I'm going to give you. But Star Trek Voyager was unique. So Kate Mulgrew said this in an interview. She played the character Captain Janeway. And she didn't know how to portray the part. And listen, I'm not big on acting, but I can sympathize with this framing, which she explained. So there were two camps amongst the writers of Star Trek Voyager, apparently, and they were writing for a different Catherine Janeway. One group thought she should be a strong female leader. She should be a strong feminist female leader. The other camp thought she should be the motherly, caring, empathetic type of leader. And they would be taking turns writing episodes. And so Kate Mulgrew had said in some interviews previously that she didn't know how to play one character one episode and a completely different person another episode. So she thought, well, why don't I just imagine that I have some level of schizophrenia or mental illness or trauma, and that way I'll be able to navigate these two dynamics, which are the polar opposites, because the writing teams were at war with each other. That's what's happening in law enforcement. And it's happening in law enforcement in many jurisdictions around the Western world. And notice it's particularly only the Western world. This is law enforcement in other parts of the world. They're the criminals. They're the ones who actually kidnap you. But that's really what's going on. And I think if you understand that, then it starts to slowly make more sense. And I'm going to bring the two together so you understand what's happening in intelligence agencies, which is, people always think the two are separate. They're not. I think if I'm not correct, I think the largest intelligence agency in Canada is the OPP, if I'm not mistaken, and the RCMP is the second largest, and then you have intelligence within the military, and you have CSIS, which we're going to get into in a second. But yeah, law enforcement often has the largest intelligence agencies, with the exception of the United States. The United States has CIA and FBI and NSA, and that's a whole different behemoth, okay? But that's the Canadian model, from what I understand, is how many countries around the world work as well. So Obviously not all, but many of them. So how do these intelligence agencies become woke? And it'd be interesting. I asked some friends who are retired but understand the mechanisms and the process in the United States. But from what I understand, there's some similar trends happening in the United States and Canada. So this is the trajectory of what happens in Canada and part of what leads to law enforcement locking on people's doors because of what they posted on Twitter yesterday. or sorry, X. I apologize, X. So the trajectory is this. There is a quota now for diversity quotas in Canada for female police officers and diversity police officers and whatever. And all of that, I think we all understand, that doesn't necessarily come from a bad place, wanting to have all sorts of people to be interested in law enforcement. But I don't like the communist framing of it, the quota stuff based on your race. That whole ethno-communist idea I've shared on the radio as well as here, that it's communism based on race, not based on the working class, right? So it utilizes the progressive stack to categorize people as opposed to their economic place in society, because of course these are all champagne socialists. They're all wealthy people who are doing this, or middle-class people. That's why all these activists on university campuses never talk about money, because they're all spoiled brats. And I know because I dealt with them on a university campus for a decade. So anyways, the trajectory is this. They'll make a quota, so we need to hire more women police officers. And even if we have to lower our standards, we're going to hire women police officers. So they get a job, they hire women police officers, and okay, and listen, there's some women police officers who are, from what I understand, who are amazing. And a friend of mine who's a cop, he said, there's a couple of women cops, like I would give my life for them because they really saved my ass when I needed it. They're really good. So there are many women police officers who are uniquely capable. But if we look at people broadly, it's just like we've seen in the trend in Scandinavia, that when women and men are allowed freely to choose their career path, men just generally choose one direction and women generally choose more empathetic directions. That's just how we are. But individually, of course, there are exceptions. Great. Well, what they're trying to do is trying to force a mass percentage of police officers to be women when there's not supply. So what happens in economics is that supply-demand ratio. Well, there's not enough supply, so they have to lower the standards. And they have to admit people who probably shouldn't be police officers in just because they, because they have a vagina. That's what it boils down to. It's really disrespectful to women. Who's calling me this time of day? You should know. If anything, you should be watching, by the way. I'm going to give somebody a hard time because they not only shouldn't be calling me, they should be watching. And he's going to call over and over. I'm trying to close this app. Sorry, guys. I apologize. So anyways, so what they'll do is now they've introduced this quota of so many women police officers. Those women police officers will go through the system, police training, and they will get hired as a cadet. They'll get training, and then they'll be an officer on the beat. Okay, fine. What happens after 2 years? Not to every one of them, of course. We don't speak in absolutes like communists. We're talking about broadly how the system works, right? Systems over goals. We're talking about the system. Well, what happens is after 2 years, many of them get pregnant because they want to have a family, which is great. Great. They want to have a family, want to get pregnant. Great. So they're a police officer. They have 2 years they have cadet experience, and then, I don't know, a year and a half of policing experience, which anyone who's a cop will tell you 1 year of experience is not going to cut, especially in a place like Canada, where we don't have the same crime rate as you have in, like, I don't know, Detroit, right? So you get pregnant, and then you're going to go on maternity leave, and you're going to, when you come back from your maternity leave, you're going to get placed in the bureau because you don't want to go on the beat, right? you just had a kid, you know what? My skills are better used behind a desk in the intelligence apparatus. So they're sent to a bureau position, and then before they need to go back to go in a squad car again, because their term in bureau is finished, because this happens in policing. You're doing many different positions over the time of your career. You'll be in, the good ones will get to homicide, you're in robbery or fraud or whatever, okay? And so your time in the bureau is going to end. What happens? You get pregnant again. Okay, so you can have your second kid. Okay, great. So now what's going to happen? You're going to go on maternity leave and you have your kid. So you're going to go you're going to stay at the bureau. You can go maternity leave. And then when you have to come back to law enforcement, you don't want to go back on the beat. You got 2 kids at home. You don't want to risk your life. You don't want to be in dangerous situations, going into crack houses and whatever. And I can understand that. That's completely rational. You would feel the same way. So it's not that they're not them being evil or irrational. They're being practical. They have kids. Their priorities have changed, and their priority is their family at home. So what do? They fight tooth and nail to remain in a bureau position. So they are now permanently in the intelligence apparatus, being trained to be an analyst. But there's a problem when you're an analyst and you've never arrested a bad guy. You've never had a gun pulled on you. You've never, somebody told me many of these newer young officers that they finish university, they'll go to police academy. They come in really woke and stupid. And then they go out and get in a squad car and they experience real life. And it takes a few years, but it undoes the woke nonsense. And you start to see the world for how the world really is. But these officers who have decided they wanted to prioritize their family, they wanted to get pregnant and then pregnant again and permanently in bureau positions, have never dealt with a criminal, organized crime, had their life at risk on the street. They're now permanently in the bureau, and then what do? These are the nerds, right? These are the nerds in policing who have not been into fights and beaten and all that sort of stuff, because being a police officer is very difficult. They then start to focus on Twitter and social media, right? Because they're still woke. They haven't been unwoke on the job. So they still hold that woke collectivist worldview. So they focus the target of their intelligence reports on Twitter and Facebook and X. They've never heard of Islamic terrorism. They never had to deal with it. They've never had to go into the madrasa where they treat them like garbage, like 1/5 of a human, and because they're female, they're not allowed in the mosque. They haven't experienced that. So they never heard of any of this sort of stuff. And then they become our intelligence analysts in the police forces, and in CSIS. And by the way, this is what CSIS is, from what I understand. This is what CSIS has become. It's gone from a bureaucracy to a woke bureaucracy. And now that there are many police forces, because of the race-obsessed DEI left-wing KKK people, where everything is about race, well, we now have a 30% requirement that all police hirees in certain police forces now need to be women. So this problem is going to get much, much worse. So that's right. It's a Dilbert cartoon. It's a DEI Dilbert cartoon policy. And that's what's leading to, oh my God, these people said bad things on the internet. Therefore, they're a national security risk. Does that now explain some of the nonsense you saw around the trucker convoy? Because they spent their life, it's these sorts of analysts who know nothing about the real world, have never been in front of a bad guy, and they're doing all their work like journalists on Twitter. and just reading people and not understanding context of people's messaging. Some people say stupid things online, like the woke right stuff. A lot of that is trolling. I mean, it's gotten a little out of hand, but it's trolling. It's stupid, but they don't understand that. So there you go. This is how law enforcement and intelligence agencies are becoming woke. It's just by systematic stupidity and the incentives within the system. And it comes down to DEI policies. That's what's killing it here. So, in closing, I don't know, how do you close that off? Like that's pretty wild what's going on right now. And look, a lot of this is speculation. There are people within law enforcement who have retired from law enforcement who've explained this to myself and others as well. But this is a known thing within law enforcement. It's kind of the unofficial, official positions that people discuss that's leading to the erosion of law enforcement and our intelligence services within the West. And it's this is why this whole ethno-communist framing or the postmodern framing of the world is so vital for people to understand, so they can push back against it and say, no, this is why it's so important that the Trump administration, whether you like them or not, has made these collectivist DEI extreme racial policies, has made them illegal. This is why. It's destroying government institutions from within. And hopefully there's going to be an end to this, right? Ben, there is a difference between stupid and not caring about consequences. Yes, I agree. But listen, and it's not, and we got to get away from, I think, collectivizing things, people in general, groups of people, including police officers. There's good and bad everywhere. And there's a lot of people who sacrifice themselves. And like, let's take police officers away for a second. Let's say firefighters, right? It's a good example. I mean, the whole purpose of their job is to save people's lives. And you don't want to collectivize any group, any profession, any individual. And I'm not collectivizing women, but the women officers who go through and after 2 years, they get pregnant because they want to have a family, and then they don't want to go out on the street with a gun and risk their lives. That's completely practical. Like, I'm completely sympathetic to that. I understand that. Unfortunately, it's the necessary evil to do that job. It's just the way it is. You may not like it, but that's the way it is. So I hope that helps. And there's so much more I can talk about this topic and related topics, but there's a lot of stuff I can't share. But that's generally how things are, and that's something to keep out for. There is positivity on the horizon, as you know, always. And today, I woke up, I'm doing my notes, I'm looking around, I'm looking outside, the sun is out. Finally, we have some sunshine where I am. Today, we just had another amazing stream, didn't we? Right, Jess and Beth? And I'm optimistic about this brighter future. And I think in order to help usher in this brighter future in this golden age, the people around us who we care about, our friends and family, they need to understand about the changing and shifting nature of far left extremism and what they're planning to do, right? Old Texas Paul, the communist with a cowboy hat, who's completely contrived and created by a PR agency. People need to understand that's the next step. They're going to abandon woke, and they're going to try to pace and lead you. They're going to try to mirror people from rural communities because they think that is the gateway to populism, and try to brainwash them and turn them into collectivists, right? And they're going to try to make it seem real practical. And this is an example. Scott talked about this phenomenon on his podcast, and I try to too. This is the gears behind the machine. This is how it all works. We're going to talk a lot about that tomorrow. And tomorrow might upset some people, but it's It's important. It'll be fun. Listen, it's always fun when you upset the wrong people, right? But anyways, it's still freezing out. It is, but right now we're at February all the way. You know what that means? The days are getting longer. We're headed closer to warm weather. What do you have? You know, where I live, another month, 6 weeks of really cold weather. Then you're going to have a little bit of mild weather. There's always one small snowfall in April, and then we're done. And then we're done with winter for 2026. So I think I'm positive, not just about the weather, but about us coming together and helping each other. And listen, there's going to be those of you who disagree with me. That's great. You can disagree with me. Send a post on Bluesky or anywhere, whatever. You don't have to agree with me all the time. I'm just showing, in this particular case today, what's actually going on behind the scenes. And I think it's important that people understand this is where we're going. Because if people know now, before the other side gets momentum, the collectivist side, the foreign funded side gets momentum, then they're going to have to abandon that strategy and go to something else, right? It's like playing whack-a-mole with extremism in society. So I love you all. Please be kind to each other, even when you disagree with each other. And let's talk things out. I'm going to be going on Owen Gregorian's space shortly, just for a little bit, if you want to join. And we'll talk to you tomorrow. And tomorrow's going to be it's going to be a lot of politics, and how the politics on your side, on our side, screws us. Because we've talked a little bit about how the collectivist far left screws us. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how our side screws us for the same reason. So they know they'll have to abandon these strategies ultimately, and our freedom depends on it. Love you in Discord. Be safe, you all. Yes, we do have a Discord. I think if you go to Discord, you type Honking for Freedom, you should find it. We're just about to retool it all and figure out what we're doing with it. So you'll have Discord, Locals, and Substack are going to be they're probably going to be the primary places just for sharing information and putting stuff. And obviously Twitter's still there because Twitter's ubiquitous. Everybody uses it. But I think that's going to be where the focus is going to be over the long term. But that will take time. Anyways, I got to run and